Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Command Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to lose your friends for $21. Isn't that a cheap price for losing your friends? Why exactly do you want to do that? I'm not the one who's, actually going to look into the psychology of that question on why you'd actually want to pay money to lose your friends, but, you all seem to keep liking these episodes, and apparently you keep getting new friends, and you keep wanting to lose those, so that's just what I'm assuming is going on. With all that said, let's jump into it. So, the commander that is going to help us lead the charge of losing our friends for $21 is, of course, Myojin of Infinite Rage, of Infinite Losing of Friends, a 7/4 spirit that costs 7. Red. So, 10 mana in total, but believe me, we're going to have plenty of ways to get this out quite quickly. On top of that, when it enters the battlefield, it's going to enter with a divinity counter on it if you cast it from your hand. Which, again, we've got ways to do that because, it kind of starts in the command zone, right? But it's also indestructible if it has that divinity counter on it, which is nice, it's protected. But we don't really care about that. What we care about is remove a divinity counter from it, destroy all lands. Yeah, definitely a taboo in Commander. We're going to break that taboo. We're going to break all the rules, essentially, and say, you know what, again, we're trying to lose our friends. We're trying to break those taboos. We are trying to do all these absolutely terrible things. So yeah, we're going to get this in play. We're going to get back to our hand. We're going to get back in play. We're going to get that counter on it. We're going to do things with that counter, including removing it to just destroy all lands. And maybe we'll do that multiple times to ensure that, well, our opponents, they don't have any lands left. And then they might not have any other ways to ramp because we might destroy those too. So we are going to destroy all of our opponent's resources and make them absolutely miserable. Maybe at some point we'll put them out of their misery, but maybe we'll just keep destroying lands. So yeah, losing your friends, $21. Technically, according to Moxfield, $21.20 currently. And keep in mind that does not include the cost of basics, but you might already have those basics. Maybe your friends can give you those basics. Then you lose your friends from that. That would be kind of ironic if they're like, here, yeah, have some basics. And you're like, awesome, cool. Goodbye, lands. So yeah, we can do that. Also keep in mind that does include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. But yeah, with all that said, $21 is still a good price for losing your friends. Let's jump into the tactics to see how this all is going to work. So my first tactic, I am calling one for the money, and these ramp spells, there are 14 of them, are going to help us with 1 mana. And yeah, we've got plenty of ramp in this deck. Again, we've got a 10 mana commander, and of course, I probably should already said this. I am so sorry, Wayfarer's Bauble. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. Pay 2 tap, get a base land, and play tap. Moving on, Arcane Signet. Taps for a red, cost 2, extremely efficient, extremely effective. Then we've got Ebony Fly, enters the battlefield, taps for a colorless again. Still very efficient, 2 mana to tap for 1. That is what we are looking for. Low to the ground, effective, helps us ramp to cast even more ramp spells very quickly. And we can turn it into a fly. Why not? Anyways, next up, Felwar Stone. Taps for probably any color, depends on what our opponents have. It really doesn't matter all that much. Again, we're in a monocolor deck. Next up, Fire Diamond. Enters the battlefield, taps for a red. Fractured Power Stone. Taps for a colorless. It can also roll the planar die. We don't really care about that. Then we've got Guardian Idol. Enters battlefield, can tap for a colorless, and it become a 2/2, which can be a nice, really funny way to take our opponents out over a long period of time if we've destroyed everything and then all of a sudden they don't have any resources and we're like, and I swing with my 2/2. And I swing with my 2/2. Yeah, it can be quite fun. Moving on, Liquid Metal Torque. Tap for a colorless, so we can also tap to make target non-land permanent artifact, which actually can be very impactful. We'll talk about some ways to deal with artifacts here in a bit. Then we've got Mind Stone. Tap for a colorless. Pay 1, tap, sacrifice, draw a card. Dig deeper in our deck if we need to. Then we've got Obsidian Obelisk. This one basically just enters the battlefield tapped and taps for a colorless for us. Prismatic Lens, which taps for a colorless, or we can also use it to filter our mana. Star Compass enters the battlefield tapped. It's going to be able to tap for a red. And then Commander Sphere, not as efficient, costs 3, taps for a single mana, but we can sacrifice the draw card if we need to. And then finally, poor sad robot. I'm very sorry, but you're going to be very sad because you're going to enter the battlefield, get us that basic land, and we're going to take you out. Probably, use the jump blocker, draw a card. So yeah. Already a lot of ramp here, but of course we are nowhere near done yet. Because next up in tactic number 2, we've got 2 for the show. That's right, artifacts that can help us with 2 mana instead of just 1. So Coalition Relic taps for 1 mana of any color. We can also tap to a charge counter on it, kind of like a delayed way to kind of like store up an extra mana, because then at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, remove a charge counter from it. So we can basically tap for 2 in a single turn with this. Then there's Vladimir, basically Worn Power Stone. And we can actually tap for 2 with this. And speaking of Worn Power Stone, yeah, Worn Power Stone, cost 3, enters battlefield tap, taps for 2, very efficient. Then there's Firemind Vessel at 4 mana, enters battlefield tap, taps for 2 mana different colors. Hedron Archive, costs 4, taps for 2, pay 2 tap sacrifice, draw 2. And we've got a lot of other of these, 4 mana, taps for 2, like, Ichor Elixir, which also has to deal with Planetite. We don't really care about that, though, taps for 2. Sisay's Ring, exact same thing. Stonespear Crystal, exact same thing, but we can also pay 2 tap sacrifice, exile any of our target player's graveyards and draw a card. So it's a great way to get rid of some graveyards, with some reanimation strategies, maybe self-mill strategies that want to utilize their graveyard. And then finally, Urgolem's Eye again, cost 4, taps for 2. Very efficient, very effective. You will notice that we have an absurd amount of mana rocks in this deck because, well, we want to ramp really, really quickly to be able to get our commander out, back to our hand in a way, and then back out again. And also, we don't want to depend on our lands that much. We want to depend on mana rocks because, again, our commander is going to deal with lands, including ours. And moving on, because, we're not done ramping just yet. 3 and more in tactic number 3. We've got Astral Cornucopia, cost XXX. It's going to enter battlefield X charge counters on it, and we can tap for basically X mana of 1 color based on the number of charge counters on it. So, the more mana we pump into this, the more mana it can pump out. Speaking of which, even more efficient, we've got Everflowing Chalice. Basically the exact same thing, but it's going to be giving us half the amount of mana back that we put into it, Multi-Kicker 2. This can tap for just colorless mana, but again, it really doesn't matter all that much. We're in a monocolor deck. We're going to have plenty of red mana. This can be fantastic at just pumping out an absurd amount of mana very quickly. Then there's Skyclave Relic. We can get this down early if we want to. Cost 3, indestructible, taps for 1, but if we kick it for an extra 3, we're going to get 2 copies of it that into battlefield tapped. Then there's Horizon Stone. This one isn't a mana rock, but it can help us store up mana, and that can be huge. If you lose unspent mana, comes colorless instead. So we get this just giant, mana bank essentially that we just store up all this mana, utilize it in a big turn when we want to do some crazy things, including getting our commander out, the second time and destroying all the lands. And then finally there's Dreamstone Hedron. Kind of like, again, those other ones where we're like a Mind Stone essentially, but bigger. We can tap for 3, pay 3 tap, sacrifice, draw 3. So a great effect for us. Now we are done with our ramp package, but we're not done with reducing the cost of our cards because we want to really make our mana incredibly efficient. So we also have Helm of Awakening. Cost 2, it's going to make spells cost 1 less to cast. Yeah, this helps our opponents out. So, this actually might gain you some friends temporarily, right? Because everyone's like, oh, thank you so much for making my spells less to cast. And then all of a sudden, oh no, all the lands are gone. It doesn't matter if my spells are less cast. Next up, Foundry Inspector. This is a great one for our artifacts. Again, we have an absurd amount of artifacts in this deck. They're going to cost 1 less to cast. So yeah, get your mana rocks out even faster. Also get out Hazret's Monument even faster. Red creature spell you cast costs 1 less to cast, so it's going to help us get our commander out quite quickly. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So some nice looting effect in there as well. Or actually, I should say rummaging effect. Still, a lot of great card selection. And then finally, Droid's Familiar. This one will help us out with a lot of things. Historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That counts all of our artifacts and also counts our commander too, which again, keep in mind, when we're recasting our commander, that can come in huge. And speaking of recasting our commander, let's move on to tactic number 5 to talk about ways to do that. Obelisk of Undoing is a great one. Costs a single mana to get in play. Pay 6 tap, bounce target permanent you control back to its owner's hand. So essentially, hey, get that right back to your hand again. Get your commander out. You don't get that divinity counter on it, unfortunately, but then you can bounce it back to your hand. Then you can recast it. Get that divinity counter on it from your hand and destroy all the lands. Or, you can actually just kind of utilize that a little bit to set up a little bit further to like a, hey, don't do anything to me or all the lands are gone. And all our friendships are gone too. Next up, Decoction Module. A bit more cost efficient in some ways. It costs 2, so it's going to cost twice as much of our Obelisk, but still, whenever a creature is battlefield control, you get an energy. That doesn't really matter. Pay 4, tap, bounce target creature you control back to its owner's hand. It's going to be a great way, an efficient way to bounce our commander back to our hand. Speaking of which, Dragon Mask, another way to do it. This one costs 3, but it has to pay 3. Tap, target creature you control, it's +2/+2 until end of turn. At the end of the turn, if that creature's in play, you return it back to its owner's hand. Basically, hey, at the end step, bounce it back to your hand. Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do anyways. This is another interesting one, Getaway Car. A 4/3 hasty vehicle for 3 mana. Whenever it attacks or blocks, return to 1 target creature that crewed it back to its owner's hand. It's got a crew 1 cost. Yeah, I mean, it could be up to crew 7. Obviously, our commander has 7 power. Our commander's just going to crew this. We swing with it. We bounce our commander back to our hand right away after getting it back so we can set ourselves up for that second cast. Then there's Ancestral Statue. 3/4 Golem enters the battlefield, returning non-land permanent you control back to its owner's hand. Again, that's going to be our commander. And yeah, Blood Clock, another great way to do this. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, the player bounces a permanent they control back to their hand unless they pay 2 life. That might be a bad thing for our opponents, might be a really good thing for us again with our commander, basically a free way to bounce it. Umbilicus does the exact same thing. And then there's Scrappy Bruiser, a great name for this one. 3/4 Raccoon Warrior. When it attacks, up to 1 target attacking creature gets +2/+0 and gains frame until end of turn. Turn that creature to its owner's hand at the end of combat. Again, our commander is indestructible with that divinity counter on it, so it can be a great way for it to be bounced back to our hand. And yeah, just utilize that indestructibility to save it and then destroy things as well. And of course, we've got other ways to play with that counter too, so keep that in mind. And then Oni of Wild Place. This one's a very interesting one as well, kind of like Umbilicus as well. A 6/5 Demon Spirit with haste. Beginning of your upkeep, return a red creature control back to its owner's hand. A great free bounce effect for us that we can have in play. Moving on, we've also got some other different kinds of ways to get our commander back to our hand for that recast. Codex Trader can help us out in a different way. Tap target player mills a card. Probably not going to utilize that all that much, but pay 5 tap, sacrifice your turn target card from your graveyard to your hand. This can get us back a key piece, of course, including our commander. We're like, yeah, well, we'll send our commander to the graveyard. It didn't have an indestructible counter on it, so for opponents swing into us, we can block with it. We can say, you know what, let's get it back. The Underworld Cookbook is another way to do that too. If we want some life, sure, tap, discard a card, make a food token. Nice. More importantly, though, pay 4 tap. Sacrifice your return target creature card from your graveyard back to your hand. Salvage Your Ruin is a free way to do this when it's in play. Sacrifice it, choose target permanent card in your graveyard that's put there from the battlefield this turn, return it back to your hand. And then Guardians of Koilos, another way to do this as well. ETBs, return another target historic permanent you control back to its owner's hand as well. So another great ETB effect that can really help us out with our commander. But now let's move on to tactic number 7. Count on it, because there are other ways that we can play around with that divinity counter. Again, we get our commander out, we bounce it back to our hand in a variety of ways. We recast it, it's got that counter on it. And yeah, with that counter, we can kind of hold everyone's fate in our hands with that counter, but we can also maybe get more than one counter to ensure that we can, well, just keep this fun train going, keep our opponents landless. Us landless too, but again, we've got a lot of mana rocks, so we don't care. Throne of Geth, tap, sacrifice an artifact, proliferate. Again, proliferate means we choose any number of permanents on our players with counters on them, give each another kind of counter already there. So essentially, hey, tap, sacrifice any of our artifacts. Again, we've got an absurd amount of mana rocks. We can sacrifice one of those even if we need to, or just sacrifice this, and then get another counter on it. Another divinity counter equals another just basically Armageddon, right? A repeatable Armageddon that we keep doing again and again and again to lose our friends again and again and again. Speaking of which, Volt Charge, 3 damage to any target, proliferate, so we can take something out, and also, again, ensure that we get an extra counter on our commander. Core Prowler, this can be something we actually want to take out. 2/2 with Infect, so sure, actually, if we want to finish our opponents off with this, once we make them miserable enough that we want to finish them off, we can actually, you know, take them out with poison. Also on top of that, when it's in the graveyard, from the battlefield, we proliferate. So this can be a great blocker for us as well to ensure that we can actually get more counters on our commander. But now it's time to move on to tactic number 8. We're going to talk about the golden pig of this deck, which of course is the number 1 card. Out of 99, and the golden pig of this deck is Contagion Clasp. An artifact that costs 2. ETBs get a -1/- counter target creature. That's nice. More importantly, pay 4 tap, proliferate. This can be our game-ending effect, where, well, I guess it doesn't really end the game, but it prolongs the game, so our opponents have absolutely no, ways to actually save themselves, because we can just say, you know what, our commander wants another counter on it. Basically, pay 4 tap, proliferate. This is basically a repeatable Armageddon once we're set up properly, because again, our commander, once we have 1 counter on it, we just proliferate that again and again and again. And every single one of those counters is now just a, hey, free Armageddon. Destroy every land. And yeah, we can just keep doing this again and again and again. Our opponents really can't stop us when they have no resources. Contagion Class, you are a great repeatable proliferate effect. And you are definitely, in my opinion, the golden pig. But of course, we are not done with the pain train for our opponents, because again, they might be like us. They might have mana rocks that they can utilize. But we don't want that. We don't want them to have any resources, right? We want them to be so miserable that they give up on our friendship. So by force is how we're going to be doing it. Sorcery for X and a red, destroy X target artifacts. Yeah, again, we get all the mana rocks, we keep all of our mana rocks, and we get rid of all of our opponent's mana rocks. They are going to have absolutely no resources left, no ways to cast any spells, and again, once we're set up that proliferating, getting rid of all their lands and getting rid of all their mana rocks, incredibly mean. Next up, Gorilla Shaman, a repeatable way to ensure that, you know what? No, you're not going to play anything else. Gorilla Shaman is a 1/1 ape shaman, pay XX and 1, destroy target non-creature artifact, mana value X. Hey, 3 mana destroy Soul Ring, lovely. Next up, release the Gremlins, another board wipe for artifacts. Destroy X target artifacts, create X/2/2 red Gremlin creature tokens. So you get another way for us to put our opponents out of their misery if we want to. Then there's Red Sun's Twilight, destroy up to X target artifacts if X is 5 or more. That can be very easy for us to get to, again, with the amount of mana we can pump into this. For each artifact destroy this way, we get a tokens copy it. The tokens gain haste. Exile begin next end step. Can be a nice way for us to get some additional value out of this. And then finally, Horde Smelter Dragon, another repeatable way to destroy artifacts. Pay 3 in a red, destroy target artifact. It's going to get plus X plus 0 until after X artifacts mana value. So again, another way to put our opponents out of their misery if we really want to swing through this massive dragon. But yeah, more so a way to say, oh, you think you're okay because you've got artifacts in play? I destroy all the lands? Nope. Let's destroy that for 4 mana. Let's destroy that for 4 mana. Again, with the amount that we can ramp, it can be impossible for opponents to keep anything in play when this is there. Moving on, how are we going to get to all these juicy cards, though? Well, Faithless Looting can help us with that. Draw 2, discard 2 for a single mana, we can flash it back. Some great looting there. Moving on, Cathartic Reunion, discard 2, draw 3. Yeah, some great card selection and card advantage there as well. Then there's Tectonic Reformation. Speaking of card selection, every single one of our lands has cycling for a red, or we can cycle this away. A great way to replace dead lands in our hand with more valuable cards. Throw a possibility. Instant speed, discard 1, draw 2. Speaking of discarding 1, drawing 2, exact same thing for Tormenting Voice, but at sorcery speed. Then we've got Seize the Spoils. This can help us out in multiple ways. We discard 1 card, we draw 2, and we also get a treasure token. Another great way to ramp, another great way to say, you know what? Let's get our commander out just a little bit faster. Then there's Ignite the Future. Exile the top 3 of your library. Until your next turn, you can play those cards, so Impulse, draw 3, but if it's cast from your graveyard, again, it's got flashback for 8. We get to cast those spells for free, so that can be massive. Next up, there's Pirate's Pillage. Discard 1, draw 2, and we get 2 treasure tokens. Again, another way to just speed up things. And yeah, haste is the name of the game when it comes to this deck and losing our friends faster. Moving on, Vigilant Phyrexia. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile a top card of your library, play a card this turn. So again, Impulse, draw 1. On top of that, beginning of your end step, if you didn't play a card this turn, you get a tapped Power Stone. Sure, that's nice, but more importantly, yeah, hey, great additional card selection for us. Then Inspired Tinkering. Exile top 3 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So again, great impulse draw. On top of that, we make 3 treasure tokens. So again, a great boost of mana for us. And when it comes to our final tactic, I want to highlight one great land since we've talked about all the non-lands in this deck. Spine Rock Knoll, Hideaway. So basically when it ETBs, we'll do the top 4 cards of our library, exile one of them face down, and then we can actually cast that by paying a red and tapping this if an opponent has dealt 7 or more damage this turn. Again, we can do this on any player's turn. It doesn't have to be just on our turn. So if an opponent takes out another opponent or, deals damage to them, great. Or, if our commander deals 7 to an opponent. So yeah, just a great land that is very cheap and very easy to add into this mono red deck. But yeah, overall, Myojin of Infinite Rage is a fantastic commander if you want to lose your friends. Hey, get it out, bounce it back to your hand, get it back out, maybe proliferate a couple of times, get a couple of more counters on it so you can just keep Armageddoning again and again and again and again. And then, yeah, take out your opponent's artifacts so they also don't have any mana for them to actually utilize. And then you can just sit there and just keep playing Magic while they just sit there and watch and do nothing. And you can decide their fates until they just leave the table and you never see them again because you just lost your friends for $21. And again, if you are interested in doing so, well, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. And with that, this episode is coming to a close, so let me know your thoughts are on it in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.